A husband is found dead in his bed. His wife calls 911 in panic, telling the operator she has just discovered him cold and unresponsive. Within hours, a quiet mountain community in Utah begins mourning the loss of a devoted father of three. But the story does not end there. Months later, the grieving widow appears on television, promoting a children's book she wrote to help her sons cope with their father's death. The book is about grief, about loss, about how a loved one never truly leaves us. Then the police arrest her for murder. They say she poisoned her husband with a lethal dose of fentanyl. And in the months that follow, investigators uncover secret text messages, financial trouble, an alleged affair, and a chilling question she reportedly asked a man she loved. What happened inside this seemingly ordinary family would become one of the most disturbing murder cases in recent memory. This is Murder Vault Chronicles. This is the story of Kouri Richins. Kamas, Utah, is the kind of place people move to escape the city's noise. Snow-covered mountains surround the town. The air is crisp. The streets are quiet. Neighbors wave when they pass one another, and families build their lives surrounded by nature. It was here that Eric Richins lived with his wife, Kouri, and their three young sons. Eric was a contractor and builder, known for his strong work ethic and steady personality. Friends described him as reliable and focused on providing for his family. He built homes, managed projects, and worked long hours to support the life he had created. Kouri Richins was energetic and ambitious. She worked in real estate and had begun developing property investment projects in the growing Utah housing market. To people around them, they appeared to be a successful couple building a future together. But behind the scenes, the marriage was reportedly under strain. Prosecutors later said the couple had disagreements over finances and trust. Eric had become concerned about large loans and real estate deals tied to his wife's business ventures. Investigators would later say the financial situation was more serious than most people realized, but none of that was visible to the outside world. On Valentine's Day in 2022, Eric Richins became suddenly ill after eating a sandwich his wife had prepared. He developed a severe reaction and had to be treated with emergency medication. At the time, the incident appeared to be a medical scare. No one suspected it might be something more. Just weeks later, on the evening of March 3, 2022, Eric and Kouri spent a quiet night at home. Their children were asleep. According to prosecutors, Kouri prepared a Moscow Mule cocktail for her husband. Sometime later that night, Eric went to bed. He would never wake up. In the early morning hours of March 4th, Kouri called 911. Her voice was frantic as she told the operator that her husband was unresponsive. Emergency responders rushed to the house, but it was already too late. Eric Richins, only 39 years old, was pronounced dead. At first, the death seemed tragic but unexplained. But the toxicology report changed everything. Eric had an extremely high amount of fentanyl in his system. Fentanyl is one of the most powerful synthetic opioids in the world. Even tiny amounts can be fatal. Investigators immediately began asking questions. Where had the drug come from? How had it gotten into Eric's body? And why would a healthy contractor with no history of drug abuse suddenly die from fentanyl exposure? While detectives quietly began their investigation, Kouri Richins appeared publicly as a grieving widow. In interviews, she spoke about coping with loss and helping her children process their father's death. Then she did something that captured national attention. She wrote and self-published a children's book called Are You With Me? The book told the story of a child grieving the loss of a father, reassuring readers that loved ones remain with us even after death. She promoted the book in television appearances and podcasts, describing how the project helped her sons deal with their grief. But behind the scenes, investigators were uncovering a very different story. They began examining financial records and communications. Prosecutors would later say Kouri Richins was facing serious financial pressure tied to real estate investments and loans. They also discovered that Eric had recently taken steps to change aspects of his financial arrangements, limiting his wife's access to certain assets. Investigators say Eric had become concerned about large sums of money associated with her projects. Then another detail surfaced. Prosecutors say Kouri Richins had been involved in a romantic relationship with another man. His name was Robert Josh Grossman, a handyman and Iraq war veteran who had worked with her on real estate renovation projects. During the trial, Grossman took the witness stand. In a quiet courtroom, he admitted the two had been romantically involved. Jurors were shown text messages exchanged between the two. The messages were intimate and emotional. In one exchange, she allegedly asked him a hypothetical question. If she were divorced tomorrow, would he marry her? Grossman replied that he would. As those messages were read aloud in court, he became visibly emotional. At one point, he wiped tears from his eyes. But one conversation shocked the courtroom even more. According to Grossman's testimony, roughly 10 days after Kouri Richins died, Kouri asked him a disturbing question. She asked what it felt like to kill someone. Grossman had served in Iraq and had experienced combat. He told jurors the question unsettled him. Prosecutors argue that the relationship with Grossman is part of the motive behind the alleged murder. They say Richins wanted financial freedom and a new life. Investigators also uncovered digital evidence they believe supports their case. Phone data revealed extensive communication between Richins and Grossman in the months leading up to Kouri's death. Prosecutors also say Richins sought access to her husband's life insurance and estate after he died. Taken together, they argue the evidence shows planning, motive, and opportunity. But the defense strongly disputes these claims. Kouri Richins has pleaded not guilty. Her attorneys argue the case relies heavily on circumstantial evidence and disputed interpretations of messages and financial records. They suggest Kouri's death may have been accidental or caused by factors investigators misunderstood. The defense has also sought to challenge aspects of the prosecution's timeline and the credibility of its witnesses. Meanwhile, the case has drawn intense national attention. The image of a grieving widow promoting a children's grief book while facing murder charges has shocked many observers. At the center of the story are three young boys who lost their father and whose lives have been forever altered by the events surrounding his death. For the community of Hamas, the case has raised painful questions. How well do we really know the people closest to us? What secrets might exist behind closed doors? And how can a life that appears so normal unravel into something so dark? As the trial continues, jurors will examine the evidence and decide whether prosecutors have proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Was Kouri Richins the victim of a carefully planned poisoning? Or is this a tragedy shaped by suspicion and unanswered questions? Until a verdict is reached, the truth remains contested in a courtroom far from the quiet mountain home where the story began. And somewhere within the testimony, the texts, and the evidence lies the answer to what really happened the night Kouri Richins died. This has been Murder Vault Chronicles. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel.